Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In New York's financial district, deep in a skyscraper gleaming in the sun, James Carter went unnoticed. The building's concierge for over 20 years, he knew every office, every hallway, every secret the executives preferred to ignore. The employees greeted him politely, but few stopped to actually see him. That morning, like every other, James passed by with his cleaning cart, silent and efficient. The executives barely glanced at him, and some, more arrogant, let out stifled laughter when they saw him mopping the floor or arranging the flowers in the lobby. James smiled, calm inside, polite outside. He had learned long ago that indifference and contempt could be weapons, if you knew how to use them to your advantage. But that day, something was about to change. The new CEO, Richard Beaumont, an arrogant and self-assured man, walked into the lobby. Without hesitation, he made a scathing remark about James's work, to the amused gaze of his colleagues. Laughter erupted. James stood motionless, feeling his blood boil, but his calm eyes shone with a spark that no one noticed. What Richard didn't know was that James Carter wasn't just the building's caretaker. Behind that quiet exterior hid an intelligent, strategic, and observant man. And soon, that quiet facade would reveal its full power. That day, James understood that the mockery, laughter, and contempt were only the prelude to a lesson no one in that building would ever forget. The large meeting room was bathed in morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The company's executives, all impeccably dressed, were waiting for the presentation of the new CEO, Richard Beaumont, to begin. James Carter, true to form, passed discreetly by to check that everything was spotless, chairs repositioned, floors clean, screens working. The moment Richard entered, the atmosphere changed. He looked around the room with a steady stride, his eyes settling on James. "Oh, look, the caretaker's here," he called out loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Always cleaning our floors, James? Maybe you should learn to manage something other than buckets and mops." A stifled laugh rippled through the room. Some executives forced embarrassed smiles, while others burst out laughing. James stood motionless, clenching his fists behind his back, his lips pursed in an almost invisible smile. Richard, confident in his power, continued, seriously, "James, you're the perfect example that some people have to stay in their place. You should be grateful to stay in the shadows, cleaning up what we, the real leaders, create." The heavy silence that followed didn't dampen Richard's spirits. He relished his arrogance, unaware that every word he spoke planted a seed of determination in James's mind. What Richard didn't know was that James knew the company better than he did. Every file, every email, every mistake the CEO made was carefully noted by the invisible concierge. And in that moment, behind his outward calm, James began to devise a plan that would silence the laughter and change the situation irreversibly. As the room erupted into laughter for the last time, James returned to his cart, unperturbed. But in his mind, only one thought formed: no one will laugh at me with impunity. After the meeting, the building returned to normal. Executives busied themselves at their desks, some still shaken by the laughter they had shared, others already forgetting the incident. James, meanwhile, pushed his cart down a less frequented corridor and stopped in front of an inconspicuous door behind the main lobby. Behind that door lay James's other world, a secret office equipped with state-of-the-art computers, servers, and files filed with military precision. The man who had just endured the CEO's mockery wasn't just a janitor, he was an expert in computer security and financial management. A brilliant autodidact, James had spent years mastering skills few executives in the company could imagine. He sat down at his screen and began reviewing internal emails, financial transactions, and confidential reports. Every mistake, every questionable manipulation, every instance of favoritism on the part of the CEO was meticulously noted. He knew that this information could undermine Richard Beaumont's power if used correctly. As he worked, James considered his plan. It wasn't impulsive revenge he wanted, but careful strategy. He knew his timing had to be perfect, irrefutable, and above all, spectacular. A slight smile crossed his face as he thought of the CEO's naivete. Richard believed James was just a cleaner, completely unaware that the caretaker had access to everything, saw everything, knew everything. All he had to do was wait for the right moment for the truth to come out and the roles to be reversed. For James, the greatest pleasure lay not only in humiliating the CEO, but in restoring his dignity, long ignored by those who judged men by their appearance rather than their abilities. That evening, as he pushed his cart out of the building, James didn't just lock his secret office. He also locked a future that would slowly but surely surprise everyone, especially those who laughed at him. In the days that followed, James continued his janitorial duties with the same usual discretion. Mopping the floor, rearranging chairs, repairing the building's small imperfections, all the while observing, noting, and reflecting. Every sneer from the CEO, every sarcastic comment, or condescending glance was recorded in his memory as silent evidence. But James wasn't a man to act haphazardly. He began collecting compromising documents, emails, and financial files. He was careful to leave no trace of his actions. Every screenshot, every copy of a document, was carefully stored in his secret office, behind passwords that even the best hackers would struggle to crack. One evening, Emily, a young, dynamic and curious intern, surprised him working late in the server room. She approached hesitantly. "James, what are you doing here?" He looked at her calmly, a slight smile on his lips. "I do what no one else wants to see. But I can show you something if you promise to keep it a secret." Intrigued, Emily agreed. James showed her internal emails and suspicious transactions from the CEO. His face betrayed surprise and fear. You know all that?" "I see everything," James replied simply. "And soon, everyone will know, but at the perfect time." This unexpected alliance gave James a valuable ally. Emily could discreetly pass on information, ask questions of executives, and even create opportunities for some of the CEO's mistakes to become visible. Every little detail added to the puzzle James was patiently building. The plan was taking shape. James knew that Richard Beaumont's arrogance would be his own weakness. He just had to remain patient, wait for the exact moment to reveal the truth, and show everyone that the janitor who had been ridiculed for years was actually the man capable of changing the company's destiny. That evening, as he left the building, James felt a pent-up excitement. The first step had been taken. And soon, the laughter that had humiliated him would turn to amazement. Over the next few weeks, James carefully observed the company's dynamics. Every decision the CEO made, every order given, every mistake made was mentally noted and recorded in his secret files. But what fascinated him most was the amount of information and levers of power he had access to without anyone suspecting. One afternoon, while cleaning Richard Beaumont's office under the guise of routine, James came across a confidential report about a risky project the CEO was trying to sneakily launch. Without alerting anyone, he made a discreet copy and slipped it into his secret office. Gradually, he realized that he was not just a witness, he could subtly influence events. A minor error left uncorrected could become a powerful argument, a forgotten piece of information could become decisive evidence. He realized that with patience and intelligence, he could turn the tables without ever being directly involved. It was at this point that Emily, the intern he had initiated, began to understand James's unique role. One day, she dared to ask him, "James, are you trying to bring down the CEO?" James smiled softly, looking out the window at the imposing silhouette of the building. "Not to bring down, but to reveal the truth. This isn't about revenge, Emily. This is about justice." The young woman nodded, impressed by James's calm and determined manner. She understood that beneath the humble and silent exterior of a concierge lay a strategist capable of maneuvering behind the scenes with formidable precision. Every move, every movement, every decision of the CEO could now be anticipated. James had discovered his true power. He knew every cog in the wheel, every weak point, and most importantly, no one saw it coming. This silent power, long ignored, was about to be revealed. That evening, as he put away his cart and left the building, James said to himself, "The time is approaching. And when it arrives, no one will laugh at me anymore. The following month, the company was preparing for a crucial presentation to investors. Richard Beaumont, confident and arrogant, wanted to showcase his revolutionary vision for the company's future. All the executives were nervous but excited. James, true to form, walked the corridors, checking that every room was spotless, every screen was working perfectly, and every document was in its place. But what the CEO didn't know was that James had spotted a major flaw in the company's computer system. A small technical error in preparing the presentations could compromise the entire meeting and reveal some of Richard's secret financial manipulations. The morning of the presentation, Richard sat behind the lectern, a confident smile on his face. "Ladies and gentlemen, today you're going to see why I'm the leader this company needed," he announced arrogantly. The investors applauded politely, unaware of the impending disaster. As the first charts appeared on the screens, a series of technical errors caused erroneous numbers to flash, revealing questionable trades and dubious financial decisions. The room murmured, some investors frowning, others exchanging worried glances. Richard, puzzled, tried to regain control. It's not what you see. It's a technical problem, nothing more." James, a few meters behind him, stood motionless, a small, discreet smile on his lips. He knew exactly what had just happened. The CEO had just made his first major public mistake, and James had made sure that it had maximum impact. Panic swept through the room. Investors frantically took notes, some demanding immediate explanations. Executives, stunned, realized that a facade of competence had just crumbled before their eyes. That evening, Richard Beaumont returned home, distraught, unable to understand how a simple presentation could have turned against him. James, meanwhile, pushed his cart to the dressing room, calm and collected. One thing was certain, the plan was moving forward, and the CEO's downfall was only a matter of time. After the public failure of the presentation, Richard Beaumont grew even more arrogant, convinced that it was just an isolated incident and that he could regain control. Little did he know that with every step, James was meticulously preparing what would happen next. For several days, James reviewed every document, every email, and every compromising file. He knew exactly how to assemble the evidence so that it became irrefutable. He didn't just want to expose the CEO's mistakes, he wanted to expose the financial misdeeds, the questionable favoritism, and all the questionable decisions that had been hidden from the board. Emily, the intern, continued to play a key role. Through her, James gained access to information that even the CEO hadn't thought vulnerable. Together, they devised a discreet but relentless strategy, a plan that would strike when the CEO felt most confident, with no way back. On the day, James made sure all the evidence was ready. Emails, financial documents, meeting recordings, everything was compiled and perfectly organized to be presented in an irrefutable manner. He knew that when the time came, the CEO would no longer be able to deny it. That evening, as he pushed his cart through the silent corridors, James said to himself, "The stage is set. The curtain will soon rise, and all those who have laughed at me will finally discover who I really am." He had turned his invisibility into power. The man everyone thought was insignificant would become the one who held the CEO's fate in his hands. The day of the confrontation arrived. The board of directors had been called for an urgent meeting, ostensibly to discuss a strategic project. But James, thanks to his meticulous planning, had orchestrated the presentation so that the compromising documents appeared at exactly the right moment. As Richard Beaumont began his speech, the screens behind him began displaying internal emails, questionable transactions, and decisions made for his personal gain. The room, initially attentive, froze. The murmurs quickly turned into frantic whispers. Investors frowned, some took pictures, others began asking awkward questions. Richard, surprised and red with anger, tried to regain control. That's not true. These documents are falsified." But no one believed him. The evidence was irrefutable and perfectly organized. Every mistake, every manipulation he thought had gone unnoticed was now visible to all. The executives, long complicit or intimidated by the CEO's arrogance, looked around in shock. Some exchanged furtive glances with James, who stood aside, motionless, calm, and impassive. The heavy silence in the room was broken only by the increasingly insistent questions of investors and board members. Panic gripped Richard. His face betrayed fear. He finally understood that the man he had humiliated, ridiculed, and ignored for years now held all the cards. And that today, the truth was coming to light. James, from his quiet corner, was gloating not out of revenge, but out of quiet satisfaction. Every incredulous glance turned toward Richard, every embarrassing question asked by the council, confirmed that the plan had worked. The humiliation he had suffered was now transformed into a triumph of justice and truth. Hours after the public confrontation, the board of directors met urgently to decide Richard Beaumont's fate. The evidence presented by James and Emily was irrefutable. Every executive, every investor, understood that the company's reputation and stability were at stake. The CEO tried to plead his case, but his excuses rang hollow. The emails, the questionable transactions, and the decisions made in his own best interest spoke for themselves. The board, furious but methodical, left no room for backtracking. Richard Beaumont, the chairman of the board, declared, "Your actions have seriously compromised the confidence of investors and employees. We have no choice but to terminate your term immediately." Richard's face turned livid. He looked for support among the executives, but no one defended him. The laughter and mockery that had been directed at James echoed in his mind, this time like a bitter warning. The man he had humiliated now held the power to overthrow him. James, present in the room but remaining discreet, calmly observed the scene. The arrogant CEO had just fallen, not out of personal vengeance, but by the force of truth and quiet competence. The stunned executives began to look at James in a new light, finally recognizing his intelligence, efficiency, and discretion. Despite his victory, James turned down the CEO position when it was offered to him. He wasn't seeking power or glory. His mission had been accomplished, to show that respect is earned through actions, not status or appearance. For the first time, those who once mocked him had to acknowledge that the janitor they had ignored for years had transformed his invisibility into a formidable force. In the days following Richard Beaumont's dismissal, the atmosphere in the company changed radically. Managers and employees, long indifferent or mocking toward James, began to view him differently. Looks of respect replaced condescending smiles. Even board members, impressed by his poise and discretion, came to greet him personally. Emily, the intern, became an even closer ally. Together, they explained to the executives that James wasn't just a janitor, but an invisible pillar who had kept the company afloat, often by correcting mistakes no one else saw. The old laughter turned to astonishment and admiration. One morning, while he was pushing his trolley through the hall, a young executive approached timidly. "Mr. Carter. I just wanted to say that, thank you. Your work, your vigilance, we were blind." James smiled calmly, nodding his head. "I've never sought recognition. But it's nice to see that respect can come from merit rather than title." Former detractors, ashamed of their past ridicule, began to change their ways. Some even came to James for advice, realizing they had underestimated the man behind the uniform. James remained faithful to his routine, discreet and efficient. But now he knew his actions had left a lasting impression. He had proven that dignity, competence, and patience could overcome arrogance and ignorance. And while the mocking laughter had faded, a new feeling hung in the air, that of respect and admiration, deserved by the man no one had ever truly seen. A few weeks after the events, the company was slowly returning to normal. But nothing was the same anymore. The mockery and indifference toward James had disappeared, replaced by a deep and sincere respect. The executives understood that humility and discretion could hide extraordinary talent and intelligence. James, true to himself, continued his work as a caretaker with the same rigor and calm smile. He did not seek recognition or power. His satisfaction came simply from knowing that justice had been done and that truth had triumphed. One morning, as he was passing through the lobby, a group of new employees were watching him curiously. One of them dared to ask, "Mr. Carter, you are incredible. How do you manage to remain so calm and efficient despite everything? James stopped, leaned his broom against the wall, and replied with a slight smile. It's not about power or revenge. It's about patience, dignity, and staying true to yourself. Those who laugh at others today may fall tomorrow. Respect is earned by actions, not titles. The words echoed through the room, and even the new, inexperienced, and ambitious employees understood the depth of the lesson. James had transformed his invisibility into strength, his humility into power, and his patience into justice. So, in this building where he had been mocked for years, James Carter became much more than a janitor. He became a symbol of dignity, intelligence, and respect, proving that sometimes the greatest heroes hide where no one is looking. And as he pushed his cart, calm and collected, a sense of quiet victory accompanied him. He had shown the world that true power lies in patience, wisdom, and the courage to remain true to oneself.